Hello to everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is called IPAs Role in a Post-COVID-19 World, how an integrative approach can create a more resilient and sustainable investment ecosystem. So I'm very happy today to have with me a very high-level speakers and a very experienced ones. I checked a bit the CVs and the bios of all of you. So you are, I would say, all very senior. So I'm sure that today's discussion will be a very high level and very, I would say, contributive to all the participants that are watching today's video. So we have, we all agree that the current situation on investment promotion is not really promising. From the, let's say, 1.5 trillion from last year, the UNCTAD's predictions in the World Investment Report that was just published predict 40 to 50%. Some of them, they say, even might be 60% drop, which might drop the global FDI inflow below 1 trillion, which is something that no one would expect even a couple of months ago. So we will need to adapt to a new normal. We are all aware that IPAs, as investment promotion agencies, are very much important bodies within the governmental structures that will try to assist, and they are already doing, of course, assisting on one side governments, and on the other side, of course, current investors, and trying to, of course, keep the pace with the ones that were potentially before COVID trying to invest into their respective countries. We saw many good practices, what IPAs are doing, everything is going online, as well WAIPA was adopting to this also. We couldn't believe to what was happening. And of course, this is what's the purpose today, that in the gradual recovery, the only important thing would be partnerships. It will be collaboration and multilateral attitude instead of, let's say, protectionistic approach. That's why we have different IPAs with us from different, let's say, countries to share with us this kind of best practices. So let me introduce today's speakers. We have with us His Excellency Sheikh Alwaleed Al-Thani. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Investment Promotion Agency of Qatar. Let me use here this opportunity in the beginning to congratulate the Qatar agency, Investment Promotion Agency, is a rather new one. It's a very young one. It's a 1 year old. So I guess just this month there will be, as far as I'm informed, 1 year that the agency was established. And already they just launched the Invest Qatar brand. I'm sure later on, when we start the discussion, Sheikh will be able to share with us some more about the agency, because it will be extremely interesting to hear how the young agency was reacting to these challenges. Sheikh is also currently serving as a coordinator for economic affairs of the Office of the Prime Minister of the State of Qatar, and he advises the Prime Minister on economic affairs. Then we have Marie-Cecile Tardieu. I hope I pronounced correctly. I'm not French speaking, but I guess I pronounced. So she is the Deputy CEO and Head of Investment Promotion in Business France. I guess she was before, if I'm not mistaken, Director General of the French Treasury. And as well, she has a very prominent, let's say, diplomatic career. She was also serving as economic counselor in Morocco and Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. And she is also a very senior, I would say, officer within the structures in France. We have Mr. Ahmad Khairuddin Abdul Rahim. I hope I pronounced correctly. Is a Deputy Chief Executive Officer of MIDA, so it's a National Investment Promotion Agency of Malaysia. He is also responsible for different sectors: chemical and advanced materials, food technology, resource-based industries, life science. So obviously a very prominent sectors that are, I would say, emerging currently. Welcome as well. And then we have as well Mr. Bekir Polat. He's head of communications department of the Investment Office of the Presidency of Turkey. I must here apologize that the President of the Investment Office, Mr. Burak Daluoğlu, had a call from the President of Turkey, so he needed to, just prior to the webinar, couldn't join us, so he sends apologies to everyone, but I'm sure Mr. Bekir Polat will be replacing him in a good manner. So without a further ado, I would like to ask the first question to all of you. So how was the pandemic affected in your countries and economies? And what did you do? What was your first responses? I can tell that all of the agencies that are today present here shared as well their best practices in the WAIPA COVID-19 platform in our webpage, which I guess was valuable to other visitors of the webpage as well, and to other peer colleagues of the IPAs. Maybe Mr. Alwaleed, first over to you, and maybe you can share your views and a bit of how the, I would say, rather young agency dealt with the COVID and how it approached, how it served to government and also to existing investors. Please go ahead, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Skalar. And at the outset, let me express my pleasure to be part of today's webinar. This is the first webinar that the Qatar IPA has held with WAIPA, and really look forward towards our engagement and our partnership going forward. Now, as a quick introduction, the IPA Qatar coordinates investment promotion and marketing activities under the Invest Qatar brand, which is a brand that we recently launched. Now, the goal is to bring progress to the country's economic diversification efforts. The IPA, as you mentioned, has been founded last year in July, so we're slowly coming towards our one-year anniversary. During this year, we've been mainly in startup mode. However, we did play a really important role, especially navigating a lot of the investment community here through the COVID-19 pandemic. And in this, I might go into further detail. Now, how has the pandemic generally affected Qatar? Well, we did have around 100,000 cases. However, I mean, Qatar has a pretty high recovery rate, around 97%, 150 total number of deaths, slowly increasing. But I mean, this is due to a number of factors. One is that Qatar has a fairly young population. Second is also due to the quality of healthcare received, and also the government's fast response and controlled manner in terms of the reopening plan. Obviously, as you know, I mean, COVID has a big variation in terms of impact on different sectors. I mean, we do see a decline in some, especially in demand, but we also do see an increase in demand in other sectors, especially around ICT. We do see as well continued supply chain disruptions, and this is kind of a global phenomena as a result of the pandemic. The IPA has conducted a wide-ranging survey of foreign investors in Qatar, and one of the main issues that most of them are being impacted is regarding travel restrictions. Especially Qatar is a small and highly interconnected country. The travel restrictions do cause an impediment to most foreign investors in Qatar. Now, the Supreme Committee for Crisis Management has been proactively leading the country's overall reopening effort. We do see an expected near-term contraction in GDP. However, according to the IMF, Qatar is going to be one of the few countries globally to deliver a fiscal surplus in 2020. at around 5.2% of GDP. We are currently in the middle of a 4-phase plan to lift COVID-19. And the IPA's advocacy efforts do complement the state's recovery measures. Now, we do play a role in terms of facilitation and providing facilitation services to ongoing projects and foreign investors that are present in Qatar. And now we are more prepared than ever to kind of support existing investors and welcome new investors to Qatar. We do this via facilitation services, incentives, and many other areas in which we utilize the value proposition of Qatar to help attract new investors and support existing ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very insightful. Actually, when I'm listening to you, it looks like that you would be, I would say, more longer lasting agency, how you approached. Now, I would like to hear maybe from Marie-Cecile, if you don't mind. France is, of course, and the Business France is a very long years existing agency, and I would say pretty advanced. So it would be good to hear maybe from your perspective, how did you respond? Were the measures, I would say, different than what we heard from Sheikh now, or how did you tackle the challenge? Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really nice to have this chat with you all and share experience. From Business France, I would say that everything changes and nothing changes with this crisis. Everything changes from an IPA point of view because there is huge uncertainty. And the lack of visibility, I think, is what makes it most difficult for doing our job. I will come back to that. And nothing changes in a way that the real investing reason factors will be the same or are still the same. Competitiveness, talent pools, business-minded policies. So that is what is difficult to tackle, is how to tackle the changes when some of the factors are not so different in a way. So to face uncertainty, we had first to see how we can gather information. In a world that has been facing such a shock, the importance of information is what I would like to focus on. Because we are all aware that we had some projects going on, and France was really happy to be the first European destination for FDA in 2019. And so we had lots of projects, and one of the main issue for us was to know what are going on with those projects, what are the information companies need to go ahead, and where should we look at for the future. And gathering information, I think, is what is the most difficult task today, notably because people cannot travel, they cannot come to see what they would like to invest on. So this lack of visibility is, I think, one of the main challenges we have. And that is why it is really crucial that we can share experiences between APA, because we can see if we have the same trends and how we can manage to understand better what are maybe the new needs of companies. And we see that there are some new needs. But at the same time, as I said, nothing changes, because the rationale of investments in a way says the same. Companies need good markets, need business-oriented policies, they need a pool of talents, and that one of the second response France made to the crisis was to confirm that we have a business-oriented policy, and even if there is some uncertainty on the economic cycle, we have the same roadmap for business. That was important for us to stress on that, because when you hear that there will be a huge support plan, and we can come back to that later if you want, some sectors had to be helped, and supported. But at the same time, we had to clearly send a message that France is going the same way, business-oriented, and with a really responsible way to discuss with foreign companies and wishing to attract them. So that was maybe the first message I wanted to share with you.
Thank you so much. Very insightful, and I like this, everything changes and nothing changes. Would you agree, Mr. Ahmad Khairuddin, your agency is also, I would say, long-lasting and pretty, I would say, senior. How do you see this? How did you tackle? What was your situation actually in Malaysia? Please
okay, thank you very much. Malaysia is, MIDA is 50 years old, a very senior organization. So what we experienced, okay, in terms of COVID, we managed to contain COVID. Only we had, as of now, 8,815 cases happen, only 123 deaths, and 97.4 recovery. So we are quite good in handling COVID. That's why we are ranked number 4 in terms of global perception, how we handle COVID. And what we did was, in 18 March, we imposed, we call it the Movement Control Order, MCO. I mean, we closed down businesses, people cannot move for almost 38 days. So that's the only way we can balance the public health to maintain economic sustainability and the livelihood of the people. So it's very important time for us at that time to contain COVID. It's more about safety at that time. Then MIDA was very much involved in terms, even though we closed businesses, but we allowed only essential goods to be manufactured at that time. Food, healthcare, medical devices, and those products associated to the main ones. So we allowed that to operate. So MIDA came very early. We have to go into working 24 hours a day to allow only a few sectors to operate. Quite a challenging time. I think we managed to do that. And the government, because of that COVID, we have experienced some issues with employment. Before MCO, it was 3.1%, that increased to 5.3% in May this year. About 800,000 people affected. The GDP also was slowing down. We expect about 5% this year. For the first quarter, 0.5%. And end of the year, we expect about 2%. However, based on IMF and World Bank expectation or estimate, it may go to close to 8% next year. So in a way, we are okay in handling COVID for this year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So glad to hear that there are some positive news, you know, from at least from some countries, we hear pretty positive news, and it's not that bad effect actually, not only on the, I would say, as a death rate, but also not infecting so much the economy or employment, because the employment, it's still, even if it's around 5%, is not, I would say, that high number. Yeah. So, but still, of course. Now, Mr. Bekir Polat, from Turkish perspective, how did you do this? Especially, maybe you can say what measures the government did, and how, of course, the investment office assisted and the existing investors. Turkey is a very big economy as well, has enormously a lot of
thank you very much, Mr. Skalar. Thank you again for the invitation, and also thank you to WAIPA team for organizing such timely event. Of course, the pandemic has affected us all from head to toes, from our social life to international business and even our daily habits. However, Turkey has been trying to handle the situation in two different fundamentals. At one hand, we have been trying to mitigate the negative impacts of the pandemic on the economy and the companies, and especially, of course, international investors. And the other hand, we have been trying to contain the virus. So regarding economic policies and measures, Turkey's response was very swift and effective. And we have been, most importantly, have been trying to selectively avoid the complete economic shutdown. That was the first priority of the government. As the President Erdogan said at the very beginning of the pandemic, that fighting this pandemic through healthcare measures is our priority, but we also have to make sure economic activities continue. So like many of other countries, multi-billion-dollar large financial packages have been introduced, and individuals have been, and the families and the companies has been introduced to these financial packages. And this complemented also by practical measures to make it easier for the companies to continue their activities. And specifically for the health measures, it was very important that Turkey, under the Minister of Health, established the Coronavirus Scientific Advisory Board on January 10, which is almost 2 months before the first case was reported in Turkey. I think that's very important. And secondly, Turkey has been investing in its healthcare infrastructure very heavily over the past decades by building integrated healthcare campuses and state-of-the-art modern city hospitals, of course, thanks to the participation of international investors through PPP projects. So Turkey was able to handle the cases and treat patients without any capacity problems, which enabled us to have the comparatively very low death and high recovery rates. And presently, cautiously, we are observing the domestic and international developments. Some of the restrictions have been gradually raised, eased in Turkey, as you know, and the government continues to follow the developments and take necessary actions to get back to the new normal as soon as possible, hopefully.
We all hope that, of course, first is, I would say, humanity and how we treat the people. And if the people would be healthy and they would be recovering fast, then as well our economies will be in a better condition. Now I would like to go a second round a bit, maybe each of you, as I mentioned before, there were some good practices that each of you were doing, even some of them you shared on our webpage. Maybe each one of you can pick up some very good practice from that measures. It can be from the digitalization, from different tools, from webinars, whatever you believe it was really something significant that helped especially to, let's say, existing investors already in the country. How did you attract them? Some best practices that you would like to share, because I guess the listeners would benefit directly from the practical point of view. So maybe now we can start with Maida, and then later on, if anyone wants to jump in within, if you feel, let's say, that something attracts your attention that you would like to contribute, please do so. You can just jump in or raise your hand, and because we can make a lively discussion like this. So please go ahead, Mr. Khairuddin.
I think the first initiative adopted by our government is to introduce the stimulus packages. There are many steps. There are about 6 steps altogether. In total, we spend about 290 billion ringgit. When convert to dollar, it's about $69 billion in total. So by phases, first to the people, and then to businesses. So I think that's an effective way, even to the extent that we pay some salary, subsidized salary to the unemployed. So it's good effort done by government. We spend a lot of money on that. And in terms of digitalization, because of COVID, we see a lot of people are now working from home. I would say when we open business back in June, I would say 50% of the workers are now working from home. And people going back to work, and the employment has been reduced drastically because it's almost back to normal. Not fully, but almost back to normal because of the stimulus packages have been given by the government. And digitalization is very important. In terms of incentive, we give a lot of incentive. For example, in order to bring more investment into Malaysia, we have introduced incentive, we call it a special incentive. If you invest in Malaysia within 2 years, from now until end of next year, we give tax holiday up to 15 years to entice companies, FDI, either from Europe, from America, from China, Japan, to invest in Malaysia up to 15 years tax holiday, zero tax. And for local Malaysian companies who are already there overseas, for example, they might be in Middle East, if they come back to Malaysia to make Malaysia as their global hub, then also tax holiday given to those companies. And also to boost the Malaysian companies to give a lot of tax incentive, provided that they invest in even small part of the economy in supply chain. So I mean, I would say stimulus package incentive is the one way that how we boost investment into the country, both FDI as well as domestic investment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, yeah, this 15 years seems pretty long. So I'm sure it attracted a lot of attention. For example, how do you see this in Qatar, for example? I would like to ask especially about the digital tools. I'm sure that you are also, of course, you adopted quickly and the people were able to work from homes. But what about the digitalization on insisting, let's say, the investors? How these tools are working? Are there any options, let's say, to as well register the company online, or are there, for example, maybe, I don't know, to elaborate a bit, are there laws and bylaws ready to use all this digitalization and these digital tools to be able to assist the community?
Thank you for that question. I mean, in general, as in other countries, Qatar enacted its own stimulus package, around 25 billion riyals, equates to around 23 billion US dollars. And this is directed towards the private sector in several different schemes. Part of it is rental delays and low interest loans that should cover employee pay and so on. We did see the impact of these stimulus package, and to be honest, I mean, how we see, I mean, the country reopening is that it is in a very controlled manner that should, I mean, negate any risk of a possible resurgence in the health pandemic. On the IP, I mean, specifically, and I will come to your question regarding the digital tools that we are utilizing. There has been a focus on retention and aftercare services, as well as upgrading and also optimizing digital communication with our clients. Now, this is both internally as an organization and as other organizations try to manage through the pandemic via incorporating digital communication techniques and tools, and also externally with our partners. We continue to identify new target sectors and emerging investment opportunities, and especially in the area of localization and projects of national interest. And here we do have several exciting new PPP projects in the pipeline that we're looking to kind of promote. Strengthening also the proposition of Qatar by further improving the business environment. This, I mean, like plays a significant role, I mean, as part of the advocacy role of an IPA towards optimizing the regulatory environment and looking for areas in which to improve and to enhance, especially in terms of adoption of digital tools, online registration of companies, online certification of foreign investors, and so on. Now, coming back to your question on digital registration, Qatar has a number of different platforms where companies can register. So, for example, within the Qatar Financial Center and the Qatar Free Zones Authority, they've already adapted and do have a quite very efficient process in terms of company registrations and licensing for foreign firms. The same goes to the ministry. The ministry recently also announced a single window program. I mean, this has been implemented very recently. and basically gives investors, and also it came at a very timely, since the pandemic happened shortly thereafter, so that investors can utilize the platform of the single window in registering their enterprises. Now, the next phase of the kind of global recovery requires everybody involved to be more coordinated and to engage towards creating a more resilient investment ecosystem. Qatar, we have faced a number of shocks, and the overall or the overriding theme of the Qatari economy has been resilience, and we've been resilient to a number of geopolitical shocks, and as well this resilience has showed itself here in COVID-19. And I think this is due to Qatar being a small country whereby decisions can be enacted on at a faster pace, and also being very agile, especially in such a dynamic space as investment. This helps provide us with a competitive advantage. Thank you, Bostjan.
Thank you so much. Mr. Polat, maybe some of good practice from you. I liked before you said that Turkey was long years investing into the health infrastructure as well, and you mentioned PPPs. I know that Turkey was one of the first countries that started to implement this. I don't know, would you speak something about this, about some good practice, or you would like to share any other good practice that you did now currently to tackle these issues? It's up to you.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Skalar. Well, very first thing actually that as our response was to take our staff to the teleworking, because the psychologies of the human capital is very important during this time, we believe. So we have been also putting lots of investment to our technology infrastructure here in the office. So, and we have an international network in 11 different countries. So it was kind of easy for us to adjust to new working conditions.
Lost a bit, I guess, the connection. Hello, Mr. Polat, do you hear us? Okay, I suggest maybe the connection is bad, to go to Marie-Cecile. Maybe if you can share, Marie, any kind of good practice that you would like to share with audience, and then later we will come back to Mr. Polat when the connection is resumed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss about our good practice. One point I'd like to stress is the fact that investment, they are going to local governments and to territories. And one of the good practice we had during this crisis is to increase dialogue with our local governments, so that we can be sure that there is no difficulty in first knowing what are the expectations of investors already in France. And I agree with what was said before on the importance of aftercare and discussing reinvest and discussing with investors that are already in France is something very important to do, and also to be sure that any needs will be addressed in this difficult time, and all information can be passed on directly to the field. That is, I think, a really good practice we had, and we intend to create even more links with local government in order to have this continuity from abroad to the direct precise investment that is being done. But I see that our colleague is back, so I want to give him back the floor, and I will continue later.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Polat, sorry I gave the floor.
No problem.
So please go ahead.
Sorry for the interruption again. So just very briefly again, going back to your question, actually the most important thing was to take care of the existing investors and the ongoing projects. So we have provided support to companies for the maintenance of their activities, such as the supply of health equipment, travel permits, work residence permits. These are maybe tiny things, but in those times of crisis, they were very crucial for companies to operate further. So we also provide a kind of hotline for these kind of communication channel. And during all this time, we have been using all the communication channels possible, including social media. And we held over 600 meetings, mostly online, with over 20 events with multipliers and investors. And at the other hand, we are also trying to urge and advise other possible stakeholders to shift their services to the digital platforms here in Turkey, because it's not only for up to us, as you mentioned earlier. So digitalization has been very fast over the decades, of course, but with this latest developments, it gained pace. So I think not only for the IPAs, the other stakeholders should also comply with this digitalization very soon.
Excellent. I would like to hear, of course, from you, how do you see, from all of you, how do you see, let's say, the collaboration and more this, as I said in the beginning, integrative approach, so being in touch with others. Do you think that the crisis will bring to the investment, let's say, community more cooperation, or it will be even more protected, or everyone will try to be protecting their own field more, or you will see like more competitiveness? Or how do you see this, for example, and how of course your governments are assisting you? Do you feel that as an IPA you are strong? Because we did some short survey and we saw that there might be budget cuts, because we heard from all of you a lot of money was used for some special funds for the recovery. So there can be budget cuts to the investment promotion. There can be, let's say, some loss of authority and all these things. Can you elaborate a bit about being interconnected, collaborated, even with internally with your own governments, like with different institutions, and as well internationally, let's say with WAIPA and I don't know, with OECD, with UNCTAD, with whomever. So maybe now let's start with you, Mr. Polat, as this round.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure. As you may know very well, each country or IPA has been taking measures themselves, which is understandable to some extent, but more sustainable recovery requires a strong international cooperation, I think, because the challenges are global, and unless we combine our forces, I think we cannot find a long-term solutions to such fundamental problems. So in this regard, I think international organizations have been playing an important role fostering multilateral cooperation, in particular WAIPA, like this one, OECD, UNCTAD, at the World Bank, etc. I think such efforts deserve more than our appreciation, and we should build on them and take collective actions for a transparent and rule-based international investment ecosystem. As for the government bodies here in Turkey, we have been always actually pre-COVID in contact with them, how to improve the investment ecosystem and investment environment, together with the feedback we have been receiving from the existing investor here in Turkey. So we just updated our existing FDI strategy and investment environment, and we have been, working with different organizations here in Turkey, including YASET, and also we have this UIC platform where all the possible investment environment improvement criteria are being working on. So actually over this, as I mentioned, over 600 meetings, most of them were also with these other related governmental bodies. So I think we should give more attention to these kind of platforms and efforts, and we should come together more often, I would say.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Mr. Alwaleed. How do you see, especially being a new agency, I guess for you it's extremely important to be in touch. Also, I would say to peer colleagues, to other IPAs, because some of the IPAs promote as well outward investment promotion or export. So then you are natural partners. How do you see from your perspective as a more, I would say, young IPA, how do you see this from your perspective, this collaboration and more integrative approach?
Yeah, thank you, Bostjan, and a very good question. Maybe I'll tackle it first regarding our external partnerships and cooperation. As you know, this crisis has created a kind of global approach that is based on a kind of more sustainable, resilient, and as well as like digital solutions towards like creating a strongly diversified economy. FDI in Qatar's diversification efforts does play a integral role, and here, I mean, there is a lot of importance in institutions and agencies like the IPA and the investment platforms that operate in Qatar. Now, you know, a full recovery out of the COVID pandemic would require constant adaptation and would require, or there is a need for strategic partnerships. Multilateral cooperation will continue to play an important role in expanding investment opportunities for companies and also in supporting ongoing economic diversification efforts in our countries, especially in the GCC region. As an organization, we have worked, especially during our startup phase, to enhance and strengthen collaboration with partner IPAs. You know, I think all the IPAs that are represented here today, we do have an agreement in some format, whether it's an MOU or a different setup. And we look towards expanding our network of collaboration and partnerships with other IPAs, and to not only expand it in terms of signing agreements, but also to enhance the method and the communication that's going on between us. Internally in Qatar, there has been an increased collaboration between investment platforms and the IPA. There has been also an increased effort towards diversifying, since part of the side effects of the whole pandemic was a hydrocarbon shock, and it really brings or raises the importance of the diversification efforts of the state. Now, currently in Qatar, we're at around the 50-50 GDP split between hydrocarbon and non-hydrocarbon. And to be honest, we now there is a large effort, and FDI does play a really important role in expanding that non-hydrocarbon share of the GDP, and also cooperation and collaboration between all investment agencies and between us here in Qatar and our partners abroad, including multipliers, trade representations, different chambers of commerce, and also, as you mentioned, foreign IPAs. So we really are very eager to engage in such partnerships, and we're looking to expanding our existing network.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to hear that there is a willingness, and I guess in bad times there is always willingness to cooperate more than being, let's say, an enemy to each other. Mr. Khairuddin, from your point of view, you said you're a 50 years old agency. Was there any need for, let's say, some kind of revisiting the strategy or making some new approaches, or I don't know, since new sectors are emerging, did you need to make some changes in your actions or your plans, or can you elaborate maybe on this a bit?
Okay, seeing we're 50 years old, we do a lot of collaboration with the under South program, the third world countries. We work together with JICA, the Japanese organization. We inviting the IPAs from third world countries, mainly from Africa, South America, to come to Malaysia, to MIDA. We educate them, or we help them in terms how to promote investment and the way MIDA does. Yes, we have been doing that for many years. And this for first year, we don't have it due to COVID, but we'll continue perhaps next year. In terms of strategy, see Malaysia, even though we are still a third world country, still we are moving out from a third world country into a more developed country. So we are moving into more complex product. We are no longer a labor-intensive country like our neighbors, but we're moving to complex product. We are now focusing on these high-tech product in E&E industry, in machinery industry, in chemical industry, in aerospace, and also in medical devices. These are our strategies. We are focusing only on high-tech product, leveraging on Industry 4.0. That's our strategy. And in terms of our approach, since due to COVID, we have a lot of collaboration with the international chambers. They are based in Malaysia. The American Chamber of Commerce, Euro Chamber of Commerce, Japan Chamber of Commerce in Malaysia. That's how we approach through collaboration with the international chambers and the industry association as well. We normally have dialogue with industry associations here in Malaysia for medical devices and petrochemical. There's a lot of collaboration being done with the either association or chambers in order to get investment leads. Now, difficult for us to go one-on-one basis, difficult to travel, so we have to go through this network. It helps a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Marie-Cecile, in France, for example, how do you see this collaboration with other institutions, or do you see any changes in the, let's say, structure of the IPA, or what do you foresee for the future? Or how do you see the cooperation? Because France is always very active also through the this development agency, especially in Africa and other countries developing as well. How do you see this cooperation in the future? Would this help to boost again the investment? And maybe you can elaborate on this a bit.
I think we can all agree that today value chains are global. So we need to cooperate, because you cannot have one country having all value chains to produce one good. So we can imagine that countries, we have quite a fight in order to attract as much value as possible. But at the same time, we know that with globalization today, we need to cooperate, and companies are all around the world. So it is, I think, all the more important to cooperate, that there is a new need emerging with this crisis. It's to try to go there, towards a carbon neutral industry. And we need to work all together if we have to face this huge challenge for the planet, to have a cleaner, a better world. It cannot be just one country trying to attract investments, dirty or carbon investment, and then another country trying to help to have a better planet. So I think we need to work all together to try to have a new kind of carbon-free industry and services. And there was, during this crisis, a raise of awareness on how we can change some way to produce, some way to consume, and there is room for everybody. And we are sure that if we try to have good practices in order to encourage a new way to have a better way to preserve resources on our planet, we can all go towards the same objectives. So I really think, because of this global value chains and on this huge challenge that we have on ecological transition, we need to work together. As for the other question you had on the government support, in France, we focus very much on attractiveness. And one sign is that during the last government reshuffle, the cabinet reshuffle, we had the nomination, first time, of a full minister for foreign trade and attractiveness. So that shows that for us, it's really a huge signal we want to send to investors, that we care about foreign investors. And we also consider that the internationalization of economy as a whole. I think one of the lessons from the crisis, and discussing with other colleagues and also with local governments, is that there is a strong link between what was considered in the past export and invest. And our agency, Business France, is in charge of both export and invest. And we can see in different French regions, when we go and see the local companies, that they see the internationalization of their activities as a whole. And as IPA, we have to also figure out how we can help a foreign investor who want to export from one place, even if they are not French investors and they come from abroad. So we are really aware that this internationalization of the economy is today a whole, and it's not one kind of investor, one kind of small and medium enterprise that needs to be helped. It's the whole companies. I think they need to be helped to understand better the world. I think information is a key point for us to give companies, and also a word that maybe we didn't use yet and that has to be said is anticipation. What is really, it is very difficult because the uncertainty we are facing, but one of our duty is to try to anticipate better and to see, especially when we can see that there will be some economic crisis after the sanitary crisis. And France has done a lot to have a support plan to reduce as much as possible difficulties for companies. And we had a support plan of more than 300 billion euros to help companies. But even if we helped a lot, we know that some companies will need to maybe restructure. And one of our job also is to try to anticipate it, to see if those could be business opportunities for new kind of investors, not trying to buy at the best price something that is facing difficulties, but to build with countries that have industrial ability and also wish to come to Europe, how we can have industrial partnerships with investors that come from abroad in the context of the crisis.
Thank you so much. I guess I can hear from every one of you that importance of being strongly connected with internal structures and as well externalities will be of the crucial importance. And saying that you have a minister which personally committed, and I know very well that in let's say other 3 countries as well, in Qatar, in Turkey and in Malaysia, the government puts a strong attention actually and support the foreign investment. So this is a strong message, of course, that the situation is stable and the measurements will continue and that you will assist investors. As we are approaching to the end, I will now pick up couple of questions from the audience. There is one which directly goes to Mr. Rahim, to Maida. The question asks if the Maida still holds the familiarization program for officials of investment promotion agencies. So floor is yours, sir.
Okay, we do it every year in collaboration with JICA Japan and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Malaysia. Only this year we don't have it because of COVID, but hopefully next year we will talk again with JICA and the Foreign Ministry to organize the same program. It's a yearly event for many years already. Right. We still continue, correct.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next question is about how do you tackle these challenges, especially and let's say arts, tourism and culture. Maybe Mr. Polat, I know that in Turkey, tourism and culture is a very important thing, also as a part of the heritage and now. And can you maybe elaborate on this? How particularly you've been dealing with these sectors? If there is anything that you can share as a good practice with the audience.
Well, yeah, I think it has been one of the suffering sectors during this time of crisis, actually. But the government has been providing some financial packages to those companies here operating in Turkey, and most of them has been expecting the border to open and expecting the flights to again to Turkey, but this happens gradually. So most of the sector is now looking at the local tourists at the moment. And they are all taking necessary measures, social distances, and etc. And I think the sector is gaining a pace again very slowly. but I think the damage is still there. So in 2020 will be still a bad year for them. And hopefully, again, 2021 will be a better year ahead.
So we all hope, yes, because now,
yeah.
Of course, the limitations on travel industry is really significantly affecting, I guess, all of our countries, also for businesses. I'm sure it's also about the site selection issues and how to tackle, I mean, how the companies would be able to see the locations, see the infrastructure and everything. So that's why the digital technology will maybe help. Many of countries applied, let's say, virtual site selection processes, at least to prepare the investors for the future. The third question is about the startups mostly. Would anyone of you would like, let's say, to elaborate on the startups, or how did you help the startups, which we know that they are, let's say, the backbone of each economy, and they are, of course, integral part of the foreign investors. When they come, they would need as well startups to boost the economy. Maybe if we go to Qatar, can you share with us something, Sheikh, please? Thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, if I went through the written question, it seems it also has a large R&D segment. So I'll touch on both points. I'll talk about the startup ecosystem and then maybe go into research and development in Qatar. So on small sized SMEs and startups, Qatar does provide a lot of support. So we have two national business incubators that incubate startups and help them expand. We as IPA as well play a part in terms of our facilitation role. So in helping startups and small scale businesses reach scale, we can facilitate introductions with some of the local multipliers, like we put state-owned enterprises such as Ooredoo, the telecom giant that operates in 17 countries, or QNB that also operates in a number of different countries. So that does give, especially in areas such as fintech or digital communication or so on, gives companies the ability to scale up their business. So that is kind of the amplifier effect that a facilitation service provides via the IPA. Other than that, I mean, there is a healthy venture cap ecosystem as well in Qatar. Like Qatar Development Bank plays a large role in this, sometimes directly investing in terms of equity in startups, and sometimes as well helping them source investments. On research and development, there has been a lot of work. Recently, there has been a national council on research and development that's been formed. Qatar has a very active educational ecosystem, both foreign and local. We host a number of large foreign universities such as Texas A&M, Georgetown, and so on under the Education City umbrella. And within Education City as well, we do have a Qatar National Research Fund that helps fund or grants research. But when you go into R&D, I mean, incubation does play a large role. And here there is the science and technology part. I mean, I think in France there's the Station F, which is a very similar like counterpart. And we do have, I mean, a number of businesses that are stationed there that conduct their research and development under the Qatar Science and Technology Park. And there are many sources of assistance, whether via funding or incentives, fiscal and financial, and also in terms of facilitation, where businesses are looking to scale up and capitalize on their presence in Qatar. Here the IPA comes in and we provide that service. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as we are coming to the end, it's 2 o'clock. I would just like to sum up in 1 minute, and then I would give you the floor just for one sentence each. What would you like to say to the FDI community and to listeners? So what I heard from all of you is, of course, protecting the existing investors, helping them to overcome the challenges. Important is what information you are providing to the existing investors and to the whole community to be able to tackle the issues and to prepare for the new normal in reality. Transparency is what is important. New sectors will come, so the new knowledges are needed. So there is a need for capacity buildings. Single window approach, I heard from some of you, is an important thing, that the investor can get any kind of information and that they can trust that you will offer as an IPA, as well your government, to them to be able to operate further on and maybe especially to reinvest. Resilience, so resilience of the economy. So making a very close connection with investors, having a surveys on their, let's say, expectations, on their, how they are satisfied with your services, and of course, continuously, that they will be able to at least expand their own operations and the new ones through maybe technical approaches and to digital tools. They might be willing, let's say, to consider next year when everything will be getting to normal, that they will be willing again to come to your countries. So please, for the last from each of you, but really one sentence, because we are already 2 minutes behind the schedule, what would you like to say to the community, to FDI community and to investors or to our audience? Please go ahead. Maybe Marie-Cecile, first the floor to you.
Thank you. In one sentence, France would like to stay Europe's top destination for investment, as we were last year. And the objective is also to tackle talent issues and having a talent pool. And we have for that a Welcome to France website, and we're happy to show it to all colleagues.
Thank you very much. Maybe over to you, Mr. Khairuddin from MIDA, the last message.
Welcome to Malaysia. We are a very friendly nation. Political stability, economic stability, social stability that grant you Malaysia is a preferred destination for you. Incentives is all there, but when we promote, we are more in terms of ecosystem approach. Incentive will die off later on, but if you have the ecosystem exposed and sustainability, and you remain more in Malaysia and make it Malaysia as a launching pad to go into the ASEAN market and also Asia Pacific market. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Alwaleed.
Yep. Thank you. So maybe just shortly, this crisis, has created a global approach that we really need to kind of coordinate to get ourselves through. Now, IPAs, should be equipped and ready for a new investment landscape in the post-COVID era. And I believe discussions like the ones that we are having today does help us in reaching that goal. Now, full recovery will require a constant adaptation, and this is something that I believe IPA Qatar is ready, and as well as in terms of collaborating with our partner institutions, foreign multipliers, and local cooperation. Maybe as a final note, I'd like to also thank again WAIPA and all the participants today. It was really insightful. I've learned a lot in this conversation, and I hope you have learned a bit as well about IPA Qatar, and looking forward to having such engagement in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Polat. Your message?
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways of this time is that we should be prepared how to work in times of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which is known as the VUCA, which is probably familiar to you. So it seems that VUCA will be part of the new normal, and success of the IPAs will depend on our abilities to do business in the time of VUCA. Thank you all for your participation and for the organization.
So thank you so much for all of you, for your time especially, for your willingness to be very open, to share your views, especially your best practices and your as well challenges. We are all under challenges now. And I would like to thank you to audience for your participation. We had all the time the same number of people with us, so obviously the discussion was valuable. Please follow WAIPA on social media. We are trying to attract attention of all IPAs all around the world, not only the members. We try to share best practices in our, let's say, different platforms. We make interviews with the top, let's say, executives of the agencies all around the world. So use this opportunity to share your views and to share your, let's say, best practices with the global FDI community. As well, investors are the ones who are looking at these opportunities. And I wish all of you to stay safe and healthy in these difficult times and to somehow cope with the new normal. So thank you very much, and all the best for everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.